Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to show you how you can get your car fixed absolutely free, and even at a dealership. And no, this isn't some kind of ploy, some kind of scam. It's the real thing. And it's one place where the federal government is actually useful, and that's by opening your car door and looking at the vehicle's VIN number. Here it is, this long thing, right? There it is. All you have to do is go to NHTSA.gov. Or if you don't remember anything, put in the search, how can I see if my car has a recall in the United States? And there it is, NHTSA.gov, and you click on it. It's that complex. And the easiest thing to do, you can go by vehicle number, blah, 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 but put in the VIN number right here. And here we go. You can see we've typed the VIN in right here. Press the magic search button. There she blows. It's thinking. Knows it's a 22 Tacoma. What does it say? Unrepaired recalls. Welding debris left on the ends of the rear axle assembly during manufacture could cause certain retaining nuts to loosen and fall off, causing the part to separate from the axle. It can affect stability. The axle nuts, which I'm going to show you in a second, hold the axle on. If they come off, your wheel will fly off with the axle and you'll be in deep doo-doo. Look here. What is Toyota going to do? Toyota dealers will inspect the rear axle assembly, retighten the nuts at no cost. If components are damaged, that would happen if it was really loose. As a result, they will be repaired or replaced based on inspection criteria. They have to fix it for free. They can't get out of it. I'm going to show you what you would do when there's recalls too, not just that. But first I'm going to show you where it actually is. I love this free government site because, as you can see in red, it says recall incomplete. These are updated all the time. This was refreshed March 27th, 2025, which happens to be the day I'm filming this. Let's say if you and your wife don't communicate or whatever, maybe somebody took it in, they didn't. This will tell you if it was done or not. And more importantly, if you're buying a used car, it'll tell you whether it had been fixed or not at the Toyota dealer. What a great website. I can't believe it. Scotty is praising the United States government. The world turned upside on its head. Now, first of all, this vehicle was made in Mexico. When it says de Baja California, that ain't U.S. California, that's California in Mexico. Always look at the VIN number. If it says VIN number 3 at the first, that means it was made in Mexico. So as I've predicted over and over again, the build quality, in this case the welding quality in Mexico, is not as good as it is in Japan, obviously, and it's not as good as it used to be in San Antonio, Texas, because they used to make a bunch of these Tacomas in San Antonio, but they only make them in Mexico now. Now, this happens to be the last Tacoma you could buy that had the V6 normal engine in it, no turbos, nice power, right? That's why my son bought this, even though it was made in Mexico, right? Imagine, now they're making them all in Mexico with only Turbo 4 engines in them. Starting to have problems already, but Toyota, you made a big mistake there. Now, if it's just loose and no damage is done, it's actually a quite simple fix, which I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the bolts and how you tighten them down if you don't trust the dealers like me. But let's say you never mess with cars, so you're going to take them to the dealer. Well, here's some tips that you got to know about dealerships. Numero uno, have that recall on your phone. Put it in your drive like I do, so you can say, okay, here's the recall, fix it. And on top of that, don't give them free rein. Don't sign anything that says you're going to allow them to charge you money to do any extra repairs. They will try to sell you the kitchen sink. So do this. Even if you don't have a good mechanic that works on your car, maybe you do your own oil changes and stuff, right? That's totally legal. It keeps the warranty good. As long as you change the oil, maintain it, right? But tell them you have your own mechanic who used to work for Toyota, but he's got his own business now, and he's fixing your car. So I will not authorize any repairs to my car other than this recall. You can tell me I need certain things, but realize I'm not going to authorize you to do that. I'm going to take your list and I'm going to take it to my mechanic. He will tell me, does it really need this work? How much is it going to cost, right? That way, they're not going to try to sell you the kitchen sink, because they're going to look like fools. And tell them right away, if you tell me I need repairs that aren't needed, and my mechanic says, nope, they're lying to you, tell them you're going to report them to the Better Business Bureau. because the last thing a dealership wants is a bunch of negative Better Business Bureaus or Google reviews, wherever. Tell them you're going to put some reviews on that said these guys tried to rip me off. Then there's a very slim chance they're going to try to rip you off, and they will just fix the thing as it is. Because over the last 47 years of working on cars, I have so many people come from Toyota dealers, Ford, Chevy, Mercedes, whatever. All the dealers are pretty much the same. They want to milk you and make as much money as they can. Most of their profit today isn't selling cars, it's in repairing. I've had people come to me with Toyotas. They had a list of $5,500 worth of repair. And I told the customers, you really don't do anything except change the oil filter. That's what it needs now. And I'll explain, yeah, your brakes are worn. But I'll look at them and I'll say, well, how many miles you got on the car? Maybe they got 50,000 miles. And I'll say, have you ever had a brake job before? And they said, no. I said, okay, you got 55,000 miles. You still have 30% of the brake pad left. That means you lost 70% in 50,000 miles. You still got a long way before that thing gets down to 10% or less and wears out. They're always going to try to sell you stuff. So you have to forewarn them ahead of time that they're not going to get that business from you. Do not give them a carte blanche. Don't sign anything that says you're allowing them to legally repair your car for anything other than the recall. Now, like I said, the Toyota dealer has to fix it free, but it's just checking those four nuts to see if they're tight enough. I looked up my all data, and it says 33 foot-pounds of torque. So I got my torque wrench. I'm going to set it at 33 foot-pounds of torque. And here it is. It's set at 33. And we'll check them. Now, as you can see, we're going under the truck. Going under the truck. Here's the inside of the right. 1, 2, 3. On the other side, 4. There's 4 nuts. They're supposed to be 33 foot-pounds. Now, I got a torque wrench on. It's a 14 millimeter. So let's pull on it until it clicks. In this case, it barely moved at all. It's still pretty tight. It hasn't gotten loose, so we check all 4 of them. And the other ones are slightly loose too, so it's a good idea we tightened up. Realize this is the same thing the Toyota dealer is going to do now. These were snug. They were only off a little. It hadn't bothered them much. This thing doesn't have many miles on it. My son hasn't driven it much. If you drive more miles, they might have loosened up even more. If they really got loose and there was a lot of slack, then they would have to check to see if there was oil leaking here. If this gets loose, it'll wobble around, it'll ruin the oil seal, this will be covered with oil. But this is dry, so this is perfectly fine. So we're now on the other side. We're on the driver's side. We'll check this. Oh, the wrench got jiggled. A lot of times when you work on these things, it'll move and you got to reset them. So now that I've reset it, we'll turn it. This one didn't get loose at all. We'll check them all, of course. Well, they're all fine, and you can see, other than superficial rust, there's no grease leaking, so it didn't do any kind of damage. Since there's quite a bit of iron in the steel, you notice it's all rusted. That's superficial rust. They will all rust that way. After all, this is a 3-year-old vehicle, so it's going to have iron parts of rust somewhat. It's not stainless steel. It's super thick. That doesn't mean anything. If you're looking at it, what you want to worry about is, has a bunch of oil leaked out on the bottom, oil got over the place, and that would be because the nuts got loose enough that the assembly had too much play in it, and the seal got broken and damaged, and then your axle oil came out and got all over the place. In this case, it's bone dry. If you do look back there and you see a bunch of oil, then definitely take it to the Toyota dealer and say, I see oil's coming out of there. I see the recall. It says not only do you have to retighten the nuts, but you have to replace any parts that are bad and demand that they show you either them taking it apart, they can easily take a picture of it, or show you the seals that came out of your car, because then they will have to replace the seal. And believe you me, they'll try to be cheap and just tell the guy, just tighten up the nuts and clean it off. Don't worry about it. They do that all the time. So demand to see the parts. Say you want them in a plastic bag when you're done, and tell them you'd really appreciate it if they would take a picture of it when they took it apart and showed, okay, we popped the seal out, here's the new seal, put the new seal in. Because you can't trust these people, especially when it's a recall and they're not making any money doing it. Now, of course, this was a simple fix. When I was a kid, we got recalls for our Fords and Chevys. We didn't take them back to the dealership. My grandfather and I would just fix it ourselves on our own cars. Because one time we had a Chevy and we took it to the Chevy dealer for a brake recall, right? And so they were supposed to replace all 4 of the brakes on the car. They had drum brakes in those days. But it was my grandfather's Chevy. He didn't care if his cars were dirty, right? So the car's all dirty, and they had hubcaps in those days, right? So to take the wheel off the car to do a brake job, first you had to get a screwdriver, you pry off the hubcap, then you take the bolts off, take the wheel off, and then fix the brakes, right? So we take it to the Chevy dealer, we pick it up the next day, and we saw on the invoice they had billed Chevrolet for brakes on all 4 wheels, right? Only the right rear one had a hubcap on it that was partly clean because hands were on it, it had fingerprints, and all the dirt and dust and parts had been wiped off. The other 3 wheels were still filthy. You could tell the hubcaps had never been touched. We looked inside. They did not do all 4 brakes. They only did 1. So, as a mechanic from a mechanic's family, we don't even bother if we hit something like that because we don't even trust them. But let's say you got one of those new Tundras when they gave up with V8s and put V6 twin turbos, and now they said they got to replace probably over 100,000 of these engines, probably more if you ask me, but they got to replace the engine. You're not going to do that yourself, right? So in that case, you want absolute proof that they're changing your engine. If I were you, I would get one of those engraver tools, and in secret parts on the engine I would put like X, O, or the number 6 or 5 or whatever you want to engrave on that metal part. Do it all over the engine. Then when they said they put a new engine in, see if those marks are still on there. Believe you me, I've seen that happen more than once. They got the same engine, they just cleaned it up. They didn't put another engine in. Make sure you're not getting ripped off if you get this recall stuff, especially big things like that. I've seen too much dishonesty in that stuff. This is why I'm here, to help people out. And hey, for once, maybe the only time, the United States government is helping you out. And like I say, you don't remember the website, just ask your phone. How do I find out if my car is recalled in the United States? There's the website, click on it, type in your VIN, and away you go. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.